Hello and welcome to this tutorial on getting new data with vectorization. In this tutorial, we're going to talk about how to get new data using vectorization and operations on contour lines. So let's get started. Now, before we start off with our actual tutorial, let's consider a scenario. Now, the scenario is, let's read it out. A certain fruit grower wants to know the elevation, slope, and aspect distribution of the fruit planting area and the areas of different levels of elevation, slope, and aspect so as to better understand the growth environment of different fruit trees and increase the yield of the fruit trees. If this project is handed over, how can we solve it? So this is how we will tackle the scenario. So we would have a paper map at the start that we can collect or purchase. We will carry out a scanning or registration operation, which will give us a topographic map. This will be followed by vectorization, which our current tutorial is based on. Next comes contour or elevation points, which will then generate a DEM file. We will then calculate and reclassify the results into elevation, aspect, slope. Finally, vectorizing and producing some statistics, which could be elevation classification areas, aspect classification areas, and slope classification areas. And these final results will be combined with the distribution and yield of fruit trees, the distribution and yield of fruit trees for different elevations, slopes, and aspects. So let's move on to our actual tutorial now, keeping this in mind. Alright, so let's start off by talking about vectorization steps. The first step is to create a dataset and set its coordinate system. The next step is to create attribute field. In this case, we're going to create an altitude attribute field under our new point dataset, and we're going to set it as a single type, and we're going to leave the other settings as default, and we're going to save this attribute table. Next, we're going to add it to our map, and we're going to set the layer as editable. Next, we're going to draw our objects on the map, and finally, we're going to assign attribute values, such as the 244 value assigned here. So that's how we carry out a vectorization operation. So let's talk about what a contour line is and what its characteristics are. Now, the elevation values of all points on the same contour lines are generally going to be the same. The contour interval is the same for the entire map. Contour lines are closed curves, but it's not necessary that they will be completely closed on a single map. And this is true for all except steep cliffs, contours of different altitudes which do not intersect, coincide, branch, or interrupt in the figure. So let's talk about vectorizing lines. These are the steps in vectorizing lines. We go under Object Operations ribbon, we go to Vectorization, and then we choose Vectorize Line. And these are the steps of vectorizing lines. So we're going to start off by moving the mouse to the line that needs to be tracked, and we are going to select it to start drawing the line. The process of line tracking will stop when the end of the line is reached, as seen over here in the demo graph. Second, we are going to right-click to perform reverse vectorization drawing. When another endpoint is reached, the vectorization will finish. Finally, we click the right mouse button again to exit and get the drawn line object. So let's talk about what an auto-close line is. A contour line is a closed curve, and the auto-close line option can be enabled while drawing contours with the polyline option. When the contours are not closed at frame edges, the auto-close line option needs to be disabled during vectorization. Now, these can be found under the Object Operations ribbon and the Drawing Settings. Now, this is the auto-connect line, auto-close line, auto-split line, auto-split region, and parametric drawing, etc. All of these have different applications. So moving on with more applications of auto-close line. Now, while vectorizing contour lines, we can enable the auto-close line option in case the contour lines may be disconnected due to wrong operations. So let's see how vectorization is actually carried out in our desktop. And for that purpose, we have opened our vectorization data source. And within this we have our vectorization data set here, and we're going to start by loading it into our map here. And as you can see, this image here has several useful objects that we can use for this demonstration. So we're going to start off with the point data set, and we're going to create a point data set here. We're going to put that on here, and we're going to assign this altitude to it. So we're going to say right click, new data set, and point, let's call it alt point for altitude point, and say okay. Now before we add this to the map, we're going to go into its properties, and we're going to make sure that its coordinate system is the same as our main map, which we see that it isn't, so we're going to copy it from that data set. So let's say copy from data set vectorization. Say okay. So now it's the same as the main map. And the next thing we're going to want to do is that we're going to want to go under attribute table and say add. Now we're going to say that this is the altitude value, and we're going to change its type to single, and we're going to leave everything else as is, and we're going to say apply. So now the attribute table has been saved. Now we're going to drag and drop this new point data set onto our map here, and we're going to make this editable. Next we're going to select our point drawing, and we're going to draw our point right here, and we're going to assign the altitude property to it. And as you can see, the altitude is 192, and that is the value that we're going to put under here. Right, so now that's done, and we are going to move on to our polygon dataset. So we're going to do pretty much the same steps again. I'm going to go under vectorization and say new dataset, this time region, and we're going to call it, let's say name, and let's say okay. Now same thing as before, make sure the coordinate system is same, which it isn't, so we're going to copy it from dataset vectorization. Okay, that's done. Go under attribute table, say add. Now this one is going to be a little bit different. We're going to call it name, and we are going to put the type as text, and we're going to leave everything else as is and say apply. Now here we're going to zoom out and navigate to a building. Let's say this one, and we're going to trace this building by first dropping our polygon dataset onto our map, making it editable, selecting region, and say free polygon, and we're going to trace our building here, nice and pretty, just like that. There we go. And to end this polygon drawing, we're going to right click, and it's going to finish up. So just like the point data set, we now have the property window for this one as well, and we're going to write down its name. Now this here is a Chinese name that says Xuanqing, which means two wells, so we're going to write that down. There we go. So now we can save that in, and that is done. And finally, we are going to move on to our line data set. So let's say we want something smaller so that we can do it easily. So this one here, right? So same steps again, just a little bit different. So we're going to create another data set, and this time it is going to be a line data set. So we're going to call it, let's call it polyline. And we're going to say, okay. Now, as we said, same steps. So go under coordinate, copy from our vectorization data set. Okay, that's done. Go under attribute table, add another value, and we're going to call this altitude again. And same type as before, which is single. and leave everything else as is. Say apply, drop it onto our map here, make it editable. So this is a little bit different. We're going to select polyline first, and then we're going to say vectorize line. Now this is going to help us draw the line smoothly. So we're going to start here, and you're going to see what I mean by that. So we start here, and you'll see that it goes in smoothly, like it's turning and tracing the line automatically. There we go. And we'll go here. So once we right click for the first time, it is going to go where we started, at the point that we started at, so that we can go around and finish it. So we are going to continue this until we are at the end here. So we are going to join these 2 points. There we have our line, beautifully vectorized line. And we're going to go under property again and set its altitude as 50 that we can see here. So let's save it as 50. Now our next step is to demonstrate from drawing settings how the auto close line function works. So for this, we are going to go under drawing settings, say auto close, and now we're going to start drawing. So let's say, for example, this inner circle here, this inner contour line here, we're going to start from here. Let's say we go around it roughly like this. And what we're going to do is that before we finish, we're not going to entirely finish. We're going to leave it, let's say we're going to leave it here. So what it does basically is that it automatically closes the 2 endpoints of the line. So that's basically all that this auto close line function does. It can be pretty helpful when you don't want to zoom in, and it can make your life quite easy. Now these are some of the things that you need to keep in mind for contour line vectorization. Now, except in special cases, the contours should not be interrupted on the map. Contour vectorization can start with contour lines with annotations. We can annotate the elevation value after vectorizing a contour line. When the quality of the terrain map is not good, that is, multiple colors exist, for instance, then auto track will not work during vectorization. Please keep this in mind. This is very important. And finally, both quality and efficiency should be considered for vectorization. So that's it for this short tutorial on vectorization. For more information, please turn to the help document or contact us directly. Thank you.